Welcome back to Zarila HOA Stories. Drop your country or city name in comment. Chapter 1. The Workshop Dream. David wiped the sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last screw on the wooden frame. The walls of the workshop stood firm now, the smell of fresh pine hanging in the air. He stepped back proud. The small structure in the backyard wasn't much, but to him it was freedom. Inside, tools were already lined on hooks. A saw sat on the workbench. Light streamed in through the small window. For David, it was more than a workshop. It was a place where he could breathe after long days at the office. Sarah leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, smiling softly. "You finally did it," she said. David chuckled, brushing sawdust off his jeans. "Took me long enough. But now I have a place of my own. No more cluttering the garage." She walked in, touching the smooth wood. "It feels peaceful in here." He nodded. "It's mine. Just mine." For a moment, silence settled. The world outside felt far away. But then Sarah's voice dropped. "Do you think the neighbors will complain?" David frowned. "Why would they? It's neat, it's safe. I followed every rule." Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes drifted toward the fence line, where curtains twitched in a neighbor's window. Someone was watching. The first complaint came quicker than expected. The next morning, David was sanding a plank when Mr. Lopez from next door leaned over the fence. His face was tight, eyes sharp. "Nice little shed you got there," Lopez said flatly. David stopped sanding. "It's not a shed. It's a workshop." Lopez shrugged. "Call it what you want. But it doesn't belong here. You'll see." David's grip tightened on the plank. "I built it within the guidelines. It's allowed." Lopez smirked. "We'll see what the HOA thinks." Then he walked away. Sarah, who had stepped outside with a cup of coffee, heard every word. She set the cup down hard on the porch rail. "He's stirring trouble." David's jaw tensed. "Let him. I didn't do anything wrong." But Sarah couldn't shake the unease. That night, the couple sat on the porch as the workshop glowed under the yard light. Sarah leaned into him. "You really think this will be fine?" David put an arm around her. "It's my dream, Sarah. I won't let anyone take it." The crickets chirped. The air was calm. But somewhere down the street, headlights slowed, paused, then moved on. Someone was watching their home again. The next morning, Sarah went out to water the flowers. On the front step, she froze. An envelope. White. Crisp. No stamp. No return address. She bent down, picked it up, and felt her stomach twist. Across the front, in bold black letters. "Notice of violation, HOA." Her hands shook. She called out, "David, you need to see this." David came running, wiping his hands on a rag. He took the envelope, tore it open, and read aloud. "Your property is in violation of HOA guidelines. The structure in your backyard is illegal. Remove it immediately, or face daily fines and legal action." The words hit like a hammer. Sarah's face drained of color. This can't be right. They're lying." David crushed the paper in his fist, his voice low, dangerous. "They want a fight? Then they'll get one." But in the pit of his stomach, a cold fear grew. Because deep down, he knew, this was only the beginning. Chapter 2, The Notice. The letter sat on the kitchen table like a threat. Sarah couldn't stop staring at it. The bold words, "Notice of violation," seemed to burn into the wood beneath. David paced the floor, his fists opening and closing. "This is garbage," he muttered. "I built that workshop, right? Nothing's illegal about it." Sarah rubbed her temples. "Then why would they send this?" Someone had to complain. He stopped pacing, turned to her. "Lopez. It was him. He warned me yesterday." Her stomach nodded. "So he went straight to the HOA." David slammed his hand on the table. "Coward. Couldn't even come to me directly." That evening, David walked out to the workshop, trying to steady his breathing. He ran his hand along the wood grain, as if touching it could remind him why he built it in the first place. From over the fence, a voice called out, "Got your letter yet?" David froze. Mr. Lopez leaned on his fence, smug grin stretched across his face. David stepped closer, fists clenched. You did this. Lopez shrugged. Just following the rules. Can't have people building whatever they want. This isn't the countryside. Sarah, standing on the porch, called out sharply. Leave us alone, Lopez. But Lopez just smirked. Better tear it down before it costs you. Then he disappeared back into his yard. David's jaw worked, his teeth grinding. Sarah hurried to his side. Don't, she whispered. That's what he wants, for you to lose it. David exhaled, but the fury in his eyes didn't fade. 2 days later, the official HOA meeting notice came. They were required to attend and discuss compliance. The night of the meeting, Sarah dressed simply, her hands trembling as she buttoned her blouse. I don't want them to humiliate you, she whispered. David took her hand. Then we fight. Together. The meeting hall buzzed with voices when they arrived. Neighbors filled the folding chairs, whispering, turning to look at them as they walked in. David could feel the weight of their stares. At the front sat Mrs. Carter, the HOA president. Perfectly pressed suit. Cold eyes. A folder in front of her. Mr. and Mrs. Hale, she said, voice dripping with false politeness. Please sit. They did. The room grew quiet. Mrs. Carter opened the folder. We've received complaints regarding an unauthorized structure in your backyard. David leaned forward. It's not unauthorized. It's a workshop. Built to code. Safe. Carter didn't flinch. Workshops are prohibited. Show me the rule, David snapped. Show me where it says that. The neighbors murmured. Some leaned forward with interest, others frowned in disapproval. Mrs. Carter tapped the papers in front of her. We don't need to argue. You'll receive fines until it's removed. Sarah's voice trembled but was clear. So you can't even point to the rule? Carter's smile tightened. We'll provide documentation at the next session. Until then, you are out of compliance. The room filled with mutters. Rules are rules, someone said. Leave them alone, another shot back. David stood, his chair screeching across the floor. His face was red, his voice sharp. You think you can bully us? You're lying. And I'll prove it. Gasps spread through the room. Mrs. Carter's eyes narrowed, her smile gone now. Be careful with your words, Mr. Hale, she warned. This association doesn't tolerate hostility. David leaned across the table, voice low. You don't scare me. When the meeting ended, Sarah and David walked out in silence. The night air was cold, the street lamps buzzing faintly. Behind them, neighbors still whispered, their words floating like smoke. Sarah finally spoke. You shouldn't have yelled. David's jaw was tight. I'm not letting them ruin us. If they say there's a rule, then I'll find it. And if they can't show it, then they're finished. Sarah looked at him, heart pounding. His eyes burned with determination, but under it, she saw something else, fear. She squeezed his hand. Then we'll find the truth. They walked home under the dark sky, unaware that in Mrs. Carter's car, parked at the end of the street, a figure sat watching them leave. The headlights flicked on. The engine started. This was only the first strike. Chapter 3: The Accusation. The next HOA meeting came faster than David expected. The air in the small community hall felt heavy, thick with tension. Folding chairs squeaked as neighbors settled in, whispering, glancing his way. Sarah sat close beside him, her hand clutching his knee under the table. At the front, Mrs. Carter stood tall, papers neatly stacked. Her voice cut through the chatter. Tonight's first order of business, the illegal structure at the Hale residence. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. David straightened in his chair, fire in his eyes. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Mrs. Carter continued. We have received multiple complaints. The workshop does not comply with our community guidelines. It lowers property values and poses a safety hazard. David shot up from his chair. That's a lie. All eyes turned to him. He pointed a finger toward the front. Show me where it says I can't build it. Show me the rule. Mrs. Carter didn't flinch. The rule is clear. No detached structures without board approval. You never asked. Therefore, it is illegal. Sarah stood now, her voice shaking. We asked when we moved in. We were told storage buildings were allowed. This is no different. A man in the back scoffed. Looks like a workshop to me. What's next? Power tools all night. Mrs. Green, the elderly widow from down the street, raised her hand. He's not disturbing anyone. That shop gives him purpose. Leave them alone. The room erupted, half the neighbors defending, half attacking. It's against the rules. It's harmless. They should pay fines. This is harassment. Mrs. Carter slammed her folder shut. Enough! She glared at David. You have until the end of the month to remove it, or the HOA will escalate this matter legally. David's face flushed red. You don't scare me. Carter leaned forward, her smile sharp. You should be scared. The meeting ended in chaos. Neighbors left in clusters, arguing in the parking lot. Sarah gripped David's arm as they walked to the car. You were too harsh, she whispered. She's lying, David shot back. I won't sit silent while she makes me a criminal in front of everyone. Sarah's voice softened. But you don't have proof yet. David clenched his jaw. Then I'll find it. The next morning, things grew worse. David stepped outside to get the mail. Across the street, Lopez was talking loudly to another neighbor, making sure David could hear. Big ugly workshop. Against the rules. They'll be forced to tear it down. About time the board acted. David's blood boiled. He gripped the mailbox until his knuckles whitened. But Sarah's voice came from behind. Don't. Not now. We can't let them see you lose control. David swallowed his anger and walked back inside. Inside the envelope from the HOA was another warning. This one harsher, colder. Daily fines will begin if the structure is not removed. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the letter. They're tightening the noose. David crumpled the paper. No. They're bluffing. They have nothing solid. But Sarah wasn't so sure. That night, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a stack of documents, bylaws, community rules, old newsletters. She highlighted sections, flipped pages, searched for answers. David watched her from the doorway, his face tired. You think you'll find something? He asked. I have to, she whispered. They're too confident. Either they have proof, or they're hiding something. David walked to her, resting a hand on her shoulder. If anyone can find it, it's you. But outside, headlights slowed again in front of their house. Curtains moved in nearby windows. The neighborhood was watching. Waiting. And Sarah knew, this wasn't just about a workshop anymore. It was about power. The next morning, Sarah opened the front door and froze. On their lawn, in bright red spray paint, the word illegal stretched across the grass. Her scream brought David running. He stopped dead, fists shaking, face pale with fury. Who did this? Sarah gasped. David's voice was low, trembling with rage. They just crossed a line. Chapter 4: The Divide. The red spray paint on the lawn didn't fade easily. Even after David spent hours scrubbing, the word illegal still showed faintly against the green. It felt like a scar across their home, a mark the whole neighborhood could see. Sarah stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. Her voice was tight. They want to humiliate us. David tossed the scrub brush down, his hands raw. Let them. I'm not backing down. But when he looked up, he saw Mrs. Green from 2 houses down, standing at the edge of her walkway. Her frail figure leaned on a cane, her face lined with worry. I saw what happened, she called softly. That was cruel. You don't deserve this. David's shoulders eased for the first time all morning. Thank you, Mrs. Green. But as she turned back, another voice cut across the street. Maybe you should have thought before building it. It was Mr. Lopez. His arms were folded, his tone sharp. Rules are rules. Don't act surprised when the board enforces them. Sarah snapped. Spray painting our lawn isn't enforcing rules, It's harassment. Lopez smirked. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it was someone else who's tired of your attitude. David started toward him, fists clenched, but Sarah grabbed his arm. Don't, please. Not like this. Lopez raised his voice so the neighbors outside could hear. That workshop's illegal, and everyone knows it. By the afternoon, the whispers spread faster than fire. Neighbors passed by in pairs, some shaking their heads, others offering faint nods of support. Sarah noticed how divided the street had become. Mrs. Green dropped off cookies with a handwritten note, "Stay strong. Justice will come." But 2 houses down, the Parkers refused to wave when Sarah greeted them. She overheard Mrs. Parker mutter, "They're bringing down the whole block." That evening, as Sarah watered her flowers, Mrs. Green came by again. "Be careful," she warned. "The board has allies. People who'll say whatever Carter tells them to." Sarah's chest tightened. "So it's not just about the rules?" The old woman's eyes hardened. "It's about control." The next HOA letter arrived the following day. Thick paper. Sharp edges. David tore it open at the kitchen counter. His face darkened as he read. "They've started the fines. $50 a day. Backdated to last week." Sarah's stomach dropped. "That's hundreds already." He slammed the letter down. "They're trying to bleed us dry." "David," she whispered, "what if they push us into court? What if—" He cut her off, voice firm. "Then we'll fight in court. I'm not tearing it down." Sarah looked at him, her chest heavy. She admired his fire, but she could see the toll already carving lines into his face. That night, Sarah woke to a noise outside. She slipped quietly to the window and pulled the curtain back. 2 silhouettes stood at the edge of their yard. One pointed toward the workshop, the other took pictures with a phone. Her breath caught. "David," she whispered, shaking him awake. He stumbled to the window, rage filling his eyes. "They're documenting. Building a case." He stormed toward the door, but Sarah grabbed his arm. "No. If you confront them, they'll twist it against you. Please." He stopped, trembling with fury, but didn't step outside. The figures soon disappeared into the night. The next morning, Sarah walked out to get the paper. Across the street, Mrs. Carter herself stood with Lopez, clipboard in hand. They both looked at the workshop, writing notes, snapping photos. Sarah froze. Her voice was thin but sharp. "What are you doing?" Carter turned, her smile icy. "Routine inspection." Sarah's chest burned. "That's not your job. You're harassing us." Lopez chuckled. "Just following procedure." Carter leaned closer, her words calm but poisonous. "The sooner you accept that workshop is gone, the easier this will be." Sarah's voice cracked. "We're not tearing it down." Carter's smile widened slightly. "Then you'd better prepare yourselves." She turned and walked away, Lopez trailing behind her. Sarah stood frozen on the porch, gripping the railing so tightly her knuckles whitened. That evening, Sarah sat with David at the kitchen table. She pulled the pile of HOA papers closer. "They're not showing us the actual rule. Have you noticed? Every time you ask, Carter dodges." David nodded slowly. "Because she doesn't have it." Sarah looked him straight in the eyes. "Then I'll find it. Somewhere in these papers, there's proof she's lying." David leaned forward, his face lit with determination. "If you find it, we can end this." She whispered, almost to herself, "I'll find it." Outside, the yard light flickered, and through the thin curtains, a shadow passed across the lawn. Someone was still watching. Chapter 5: Cracks in the Wall. The fines came like a storm. Every morning, David opened the mailbox to another letter, another stack of paper with red numbers printed across the top. $3.50 due immediately. Failure to pay will result in legal action. The pile grew on the counter, spreading like an infection through their home. Sarah watched him slam each envelope down, his hands trembling. "They're choking us, Sarah. Day by day." She touched his arm gently. "We'll get through it. I'm working on the papers." But David pulled away, pacing. It's not enough. Carter's winning. Everyone sees us as the problem now. At the grocery store, Sarah felt the shift. People she once chatted with now avoided eye contact. A mother tugged her child's hand when Sarah reached for the same loaf of bread. In the parking lot, she overheard two neighbors whisper, "Why don't they just tear it down? Stubborn. That's what pride does." Sarah sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting tears. At home, David buried himself in the workshop. The whir of saws and the hammering of nails filled the nights. It wasn't just about projects anymore, it was his escape. One evening, Sarah stepped inside. The air smelled of sawdust, sharp and earthy. Tools were scattered everywhere, half-built pieces stacked against the wall. "David," she said softly, "you're working too much." He didn't look up. "It's the only thing keeping me sane." She walked closer, voice breaking. "It's also the thing tearing us apart." He slammed the hammer down on the bench. "What do you want me to do? Tear it all down and crawl to Carter?" She flinched at his anger. "I want you here. With me. Not drowning in this fight." For a moment, his face softened, guilt flickering in his eyes. But then he turned away, shoulders rigid. The next HOA meeting was worse than the last. David and Sarah walked in, whispers chasing them. The room felt smaller, tighter. Carter sat at the front, flanked by Lopez and Mrs. Parker. Carter adjusted her glasses. "We've given you multiple warnings. You're now in violation of several bylaws." David's voice was sharp. "Show me the bylaw. Right now. Where does it say I can't build on my own property?" The room stirred. People leaned forward, waiting. Carter shuffled her papers, then smiled coldly. "The bylaw is clear to those who understand it. Perhaps you should consult a lawyer." Sarah stood. Her voice rang louder than she expected. "You don't have it, do you? That's why you never show it." Carter's eyes narrowed, but she didn't answer. Instead, she tapped her gavel. Meeting adjourned. The neighbors began to file out, some shaking their heads, others whispering about troublemakers. As they left, Lopez brushed past David and muttered, "You're digging your own grave." David's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. That night, silence hung between them at the dinner table. Sarah pushed her food around her plate. Finally, she whispered, "They're breaking you." David's fork clattered onto the plate. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice raw. "They won't win. Not while I'm breathing." Sarah reached across the table. "Then let me help. Let me be the one to find proof." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Do it. Because I don't know how much longer I can stand this." The next morning, Sarah spread out every HOA document on the dining table. Page after page of legal jargon, amendments, meeting minutes, dusty bylaws dating back years. Hours passed. She highlighted, circled, wrote notes in the margins. Then she froze. On the bottom of a faded page, in small print, she found something. A clause buried under home additions and improvements. Her lips moved as she read. Workshops permitted, if not exceeding. Her heart pounded. She grabbed her phone, snapping a picture. This was it. The proof Carter had hidden all along. Sarah whispered, "We can fight this." At that moment, the doorbell rang. David, in the garage, shouted, "Can you get it?" Sarah walked to the door, clutching the paper. She opened it to find a man in a dark suit, holding a thick envelope. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "you've been served." Her hands shook as she took the envelope. On the front, bold black letters read, "Notice of legal action, property violation." She gasped, the paper falling from her hand. Chapter 6, The Summons. The envelope sat on the kitchen table like a curse. Thick, heavy, unavoidable. David tore it open with shaking hands. His face hardened as he scanned the words. "They're suing us, Sarah. They filed in county court." Sarah clutched the edge of the table. "Already? We just—" David cut her off. His voice was sharp. "This is what they wanted. To drag us into court, to bleed us dry until we give up. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, pacing. Lawyers, court fees. This could ruin us. Sarah took a deep breath. Not if we fight with the truth. David, I found something. His head snapped toward her. What do you mean? She spread the papers across the table, her finger jabbing at the faded clause. Here. It says workshops are permitted, as long as they don't exceed certain dimensions. And yours doesn't. David leaned closer, eyes narrowing. You're sure? Yes. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. Carter lied. For the first time in weeks, David's shoulders dropped. A flicker of hope crossed his face. The next day, they sat across from a lawyer in a small office downtown. Mr. Harris was gray-haired, with tired eyes that had seen too many HOA battles. He scanned the documents in silence, then looked up. This clause is valid. If your measurements are correct, you're within your rights. Sarah leaned forward. So we can win? Harris sighed. Possibly. But HOAs fight dirty. They'll twist words, call witnesses, drag your neighbors into it. David's fists clenched. Let them. I'm done being pushed around. The lawyer's tone grew serious. You'll need evidence. Photos. Record. And Sarah, his gaze lingered on her. You may need to testify. Calm. Controlled. No emotion. Sarah nodded, though her stomach churned. Back home, they measured every wall of the workshop twice. David wrote down the numbers, Sarah snapped photos with her phone. Perfect, David muttered. Exactly within the limit. But when she looked at him, Sarah saw the exhaustion in his eyes. The lawsuit wasn't just about money or rules anymore, it was about breaking them from the inside. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The words of Mrs. Green echoed in her mind. It's about control. The first court hearing came quickly. Sarah and David walked into the courthouse hand in hand. Carter was already there, standing tall in a sharp suit, Lopez at her side. They looked confident, even smug. Carter smiled thinly as Sarah passed. This won't end the way you think. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Inside the courtroom, the judge glanced over the case file. Carter's lawyer spoke first, painting the workshop as a reckless violation that threatened the character of the neighborhood. Sarah sat stiffly, biting her tongue. Then Harris stood. Calm. Steady. He held up the bylaws and pointed to the clause Sarah had found. Your Honor, the HOA has misled my client. The workshop is within the limits clearly stated here. Carter's lawyer scoffed. Obsolete language. It no longer applies. The judge raised an eyebrow. We'll see. As they left the courtroom, Carter brushed past Sarah. Her whisper was sharp as a blade. You won't win. I'll make sure of it. Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears. She wanted to scream, but instead, she stared back, cold and silent. That night, David sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. They'll drag this out for months, Sarah. We can't afford it. Sarah placed the photo of the bylaw on the table between them. Her voice was low but fierce. Then we make them pay. If Carter forged or hid documents, we expose her. We don't just win, we end her rule. David looked at her, a spark of fire in his tired eyes. You're serious? She nodded. Dead serious. The next morning, Sarah checked the mailbox. Another letter. She tore it open, expecting another fine. But it wasn't. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in bold letters. Stop digging into the bylaws, or you'll regret it. No signature. Just a warning. Sarah's hands shook as she stared at the page. Someone knew. Someone wanted her silent. She whispered, David, we're not just fighting Carter. Someone else is in this too. Chapter 7, The Threat. The note lay on the kitchen table. Plain paper. Bold words. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Sarah stared at it, her fingers trembling. This isn't Carter's style. This is worse. David snatched it up, crumpling the edges. Cowards. They don't even sign their names. She grabbed his arm. David, this means someone's watching us. Someone knows what I'm doing. His jaw tightened. Good. Let them watch. I'm not scared. But she could see it in his eyes. He was scared, just not for himself. That night, Sarah double-checked the lock. Every door. Every window. The house felt different now, smaller, unsafe. She pulled the curtains closed, but still felt eyes on her back. David came out of the workshop, wiping grease from his hands. You're jumpy. Because someone's out there, she whispered. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. We'll handle this. But when the lights were out and the house fell quiet, Sarah lay awake. Every creak of the wood, every shift of the wind, made her sit up, heart racing. The next morning, they found the workshop door ajar. David froze. I locked this last night. Inside, the shelves were disturbed. Tools scattered. Sawdust tracked across the floor like someone had walked through deliberately. Sarah's throat tightened. They were here. David's fists clenched. I'll call the police. But the officer who arrived looked unimpressed. He jotted notes, asked a few questions, then shrugged. No forced entry. Nothing stolen. Probably kids messing around. Sarah's voice cracked. Kids don't leave threatening notes. The officer sighed. File a report if you want, but without evidence, there's nothing we can do. David muttered under his breath as the patrol car pulled away. They don't care. Later that day, Mrs. Green stopped by with her cane tapping against the porch. Her eyes darted around nervously. I heard about the break-in, she whispered. You need to be careful. Carter's got people loyal to her. People who'd do things she won't dirty her own hands with. Sarah's chest ached. But why us? Why go this far? Mrs. Green's lips thinned. Because if you win, others might fight back too. And Carter can't allow that. That evening, David buried himself in work again, hammering furiously as if every strike could drive away the pressure. Sarah stood in the doorway, her voice breaking. They want us divided. Don't let them win. He stopped, sweat dripping from his brow. For a moment, he just stared at her, then nodded silently. 2 nights later, Sarah woke to the sound of glass shattering. She bolted upright. David! They rushed downstairs. The living room window was broken, shards glittering on the floor. On the couch lay a brick wrapped in paper. David unwrapped it, his hands shaking. The words were scrawled in black marker. Tear it down, or next time, it won't be your window. Sarah gasped, her hand over her mouth. They're threatening violence now. David's voice was hoarse. This is no longer about fines. This is war. The next morning, they returned to Harris, their lawyer, and laid the brick on his desk. His eyes darkened. This changes everything. If we present this, it shows harassment. The judge won't like it. Sarah leaned forward. But can you prove it's them? Harris shook his head. Without a witness, it's just intimidation. And intimidation works, if you let it. David slammed his fist on the desk. I'm not letting them scare my wife in her own home. Harris lowered his voice. Then be ready. Court isn't your only battlefield anymore. That night, as Sarah cleaned the glass from the floor, she felt the weight of every shadow outside. The yard light flickered again, just like before. She whispered, They're still out there. David came to the window, staring into the darkness. His shoulders were rigid, his fists balled. But this time, instead of fear, his voice carried something colder. Then let them come. I'll be ready. As he spoke, headlights swept across the street. A car slowed in front of their house. The engine idled for too long. Then, slowly, it pulled away into the night. Sarah's skin prickled. Whoever it was, they wanted to be seen. Chapter 8: Escalation. The broken window was boarded up, but the house no longer felt like home. Sarah moved through each room with tight shoulders, jumping at every sound. David noticed. You're not eating. You're not sleeping. She whispered, Because I'm waiting. Waiting for them to strike again. He pulled her close, his voice low. I won't let them hurt you. But Sarah wasn't sure he could stop it. Not this time. At the courthouse, Carter looked untouched by the chaos. She strolled in wearing pearls, her smile confident. Sarah leaned toward David. She knows about the threats. David's jaw flexed. Then she's behind them. When the hearing began, Carter's lawyer claimed the workshop was a danger to the neighborhood and an eyesore that lowered property values. David nearly exploded, but Harris raised a hand, calming him. Then Harris stepped forward, holding up the bylaw Sarah had found. Your Honor, the HOA concealed this rule. The workshop is within limit. This case should never have been filed. The judge's eyes narrowed. I'll review the evidence. Both parties will return in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Sarah felt her stomach drop. 2 more weeks of waiting, of threats, of fear. That night, they came home to find the workshop spray-painted again. This time, one word. Remove. David stormed inside, grabbed a bucket and sponge, and attacked the paint furiously. Sarah watched from the porch, her heart aching. You're letting them break you, she whispered. He didn't stop scrubbing. No. They want me broken. I refuse. The next morning, Sarah drove to the store for groceries. When she came back, she froze. Her car tires were slashed. All 4. She dropped the bags, her breath sharp. Neighbors stood nearby, whispering, watching. None offered to help. David came running out. Sarah. What happened? She pointed to the car, tears in her eyes. They're targeting me now. David's face twisted with rage. Enough is enough. He marched to the HOA office the next day. Sarah followed, trying to hold him back. Inside, Carter sat at her desk, calm as ever. David slammed the threat note and photos of the vandalism in front of her. This is your doing. Admit it. Carter didn't flinch. Mr. Miller, I don't condone vandalism. But your accusations are reckless. Perhaps you should focus on resolving your violation instead of blaming others. Sarah's voice cracked. You're lying. Carter leaned back, folding her hands. Careful, Mrs. Miller. False accusations can backfire. David's fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. But Sarah pulled him away before he said something that could be used against them. That evening, Mrs. Green knocked softly on their door. She stepped inside, her voice trembling. I saw Lopez near your car this morning. He had a knife in his hand. Sarah gasped. Then it's him. Mrs. Green shook her head. It may be more than just him. Carter whispers, and the others obey. That's how she rules. Sarah's chest tightened. So we're surrounded. Mrs. Green squeezed her hand. But you're not alone. Some of us see what she's doing. We're afraid to speak. David's eyes darkened. Then it's time someone stopped being afraid. The next court date loomed. The fines, the threats, the vandalism, all of it pressed on Sarah's shoulders like a weight. But she held on to one thought, the clause she had found. Their lifeline. One evening, she stayed up late, rereading the bylaws again, making copies, highlighting key points. She wanted to be ready for anything Carter's lawyer might throw at them. As she turned the final page, something caught her eye. A line she hadn't noticed before. Her heart skipped. She read it again, slower this time. It wasn't just about workshops. It was about board responsibilities. The clause clearly stated that HOA presidents must disclose all amendments to homeowners upon request. Failure to do so could be considered misrepresentation. Sarah sat back, her pulse racing. David, she whispered, clutching the paper, this isn't just proof we're right. This could destroy Carter. Chapter 9, The Discovery. Sarah sat at the dining table long after midnight, the single lamp glowing over scattered papers. Her fingers traced the clause again and again. Failure to disclose amendments constitutes misrepresentation. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a weapon. When David came in from the workshop, his shirt streaked with dust, she looked up with wild eyes. David, she broke the rules. Carter hid amendments. That's misconduct. He froze, staring at the paper. Are you sure? Her voice shook. It's right here. If the judge sees this, she's finished. David sat down slowly, running a hand over his face. For the first time in weeks, he looked relieved. "You've done it, Sarah. You've found the crack in her armor." But Sarah didn't smile. Her chest felt heavy. "If she realizes I know this, she won't just sit back." The next day, Sarah went to make copies at the library. As she walked to her car, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The engine idled. The driver didn't look away when she met his eyes. Her hands tightened on the folder. She climbed into her car, heart pounding. When she pulled out, the SUV followed. She turned left. So did he. She turned right. He stayed behind. Finally, she swung into a crowded gas station, parked, and stayed put. After a moment, the SUV rolled past slowly and disappeared down the road. Sarah sat trembling in her seat, gripping the steering wheel. "They're watching me." That evening, David noticed her silence at dinner. "What happened?" She told him about the SUV. His jaw locked. "This is harassment. We go to the police." She shook her head. "They didn't break a law by following me. The police won't help." David slammed his fist on the table. "Then I will. If they come near you again, I swear." "Stop." Sarah's voice cracked. "That's what they want. For you to snap. To look violent. Don't give them that." David looked away, breathing hard, his knuckles white against the table. The next court session came quickly. Sarah clutched the copied clause in her bag, her lifeline. Carter sat across the aisle, calm, confident. Lopez smirked at them, arms folded. When Harris presented the bylaw again, Carter's lawyer interrupted. "That clause is outdated. It hasn't applied for years." Harris shook his head. "Then why is it still in the official records? And why did Mrs. Carter fail to disclose it when my clients requested the documents?" The judge's brow furrowed. "Mrs. Carter, do you have a response?" For the first time, Carter hesitated. Just for a second, but Sarah saw it. That flicker of fear. After the hearing, as Sarah stepped outside, Carter approached her. Her smile was gone. Her voice was low and sharp. "You don't know what you're doing." Sarah held her ground. "I know exactly what I'm doing. And soon, everyone else will too." Carter leaned in closer, her eyes cold. "You think this ends in court? You're wrong. This ends when you learn your place." Sarah's chest tightened, but she forced herself not to look away. David pulled her aside, glaring at Carter. "Stay away from my wife." Carter's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Or what?" Then she walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept checking the window, expecting headlights to sweep across the lawn again. At 2 a.m., she heard it, an engine outside. She peeked through the curtains. The same black SUV idled across the street. No one got out. It just sat there, watching. Sarah's hands shook as she whispered, "David." He stumbled to the window, eyes narrowing. "That's it." He stormed toward the door. "Don't," she cried, grabbing his arm. But before she could stop him, he yanked the door open and stepped onto the porch. "Hey! I see you," he shouted into the night. "You want me? Come out." The SUV's headlights flicked on. The engine roared, and it sped off into the dark. Sarah ran to David, her voice breaking. "You can't keep doing this. They're baiting you." He breathed hard, fist still clenched. "Let them bait me. I won't be intimidated." But as they went back inside, Sarah noticed something on the porch. A small envelope tucked against the doorframe. Her stomach turned as she picked it up. Inside was a photo. A grainy picture of her, taken earlier that day at the gas station. Scrawled across the bottom in black marker were 3 words. "We see you." Chapter 10, The Threat. Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the photo lying between her and David. The words glared up at them, "We see you." Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "They followed me. They took this. They're watching everything." David's jaw was stone. "This isn't just the HOA anymore. This is personal." He reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police." Sarah grabbed his arm. "What will you tell them? That someone left a picture? They'll shrug. They'll say it's nothing. David's voice cracked with rage. It's not nothing. They're threatening you. She pressed her hand over his. If we make noise without proof, they'll twist it. Carter will say we're paranoid. We need to be smart. The next morning, Sarah drove to City Hall. She requested every document tied to the HOA. It took hours, but finally she left with a thick stack of records. At the counter, the clerk gave her a sympathetic look. You're not the first to complain about that board. Sarah froze. What do you mean? The clerk lowered her voice. They've had incidents, but people stay quiet. They don't want trouble. Sarah swallowed hard. I'm not staying quiet. That evening, Sarah and David spread the documents across the living room floor. Receipts, emails, board minutes, all scattered. David pointed at one line in a financial statement. Look, they paid a contractor for security patrols, but there's no record of who was hired. Sarah's chest tightened. The SUV. That's their patrol. They're using HOA money to stalk us. Her voice trembled, but then it hardened. We can prove this. David looked at her, pride in his eyes. You're not afraid anymore. She met his gaze. I'm terrified, but I won't let them win. Later that night, Sarah prepared coffee while David worked in the workshop. She was rinsing a mug when the doorbell rang. She froze. It was nearly midnight. She crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the dark porch. Her stomach churned. Slowly, she opened the door a crack. A box sat on the mat. Her breath hitched. She bent down and lifted it with trembling hands. Inside was a single hammer. David's hammer, the one he had lost months ago. But it wasn't just returned. It was stained. Dark streaks ran across the wooden handle. On top of it lay another note. Workshops can be dangerous. Sarah stumbled back, the box slipping from her hands. The hammer clattered onto the floor. David rushed in from the workshop, his face pale when he saw it. What is this? Sarah shook her head, tears filling her eyes. They were inside, David. They took it from here. They've been in our home. David's fists clenched, his voice breaking. That's it. We're not waiting anymore. Tomorrow I'm filing charges. Trespassing. Harassment. All of it. Sarah whispered, What if they twist it again? David looked at her with fire in his eyes. Then we go bigger. Court isn't enough. We go public. Everyone will know what Carter's doing. Sarah stared at him, fear and hope colliding inside her. If we go public, there's no going back. David nodded. Good. Let them come. We'll burn their lies with the truth. But just as he spoke, the lights flickered. The house went dark. From outside, the low rumble of an engine echoed down the street. Sarah's breath caught as she pulled David to the window. The SUV was back, idling under the street lamp, headlights off. Only this time, it wasn't alone. Another SUV rolled in behind it. 2 sets of headlights. 2 engines. Both waiting. Sarah's voice broke in a whisper. They've come back. Chapter 11, Breaking Point. The 2 SUVs stayed outside for hours. Their engines rumbled low, like a threat that refused to fade. Sarah sat on the couch, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. David paced the living room, fists tight, every few minutes peeking through the curtains. Finally, the vehicles pulled away. Silence fell, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence of a storm holding its breath. Sarah whispered, They'll come back. David nodded. Then tomorrow we hit first. Morning light cut through the blinds. David loaded a flash drive with every document they had collected. Financial reports, secret payments, the photo, the threatening note. Sarah printed copies and placed them in folders. This goes to the police, David said, and the news. Sarah hesitated. Once we go public, they'll make us enemies of the whole neighborhood. David's voice was steady. Better enemies than victims. At the police station, they sat across from Officer Daniels. He flipped through the papers, his brow furrowing. This is serious, Daniels said. But without hard proof of who left the notes or who's in those SUVs, it's tough. We need more. Sarah slammed her hand on the desk. More? They broke into our home. They threatened us. Daniels leaned back, calm but firm. We'll increase patrols. But to press charges, we need undeniable evidence. David's face hardened. Then we'll get it ourselves. That afternoon, Sarah emailed everything to a local reporter. Within an hour, the reporter called back. I've been hearing whispers about your HOA, the woman said. If what you're saying is true, it's bigger than your workshop. People need to know. Sarah's hands shook as she held the phone. Then tell them. Publish it. The reporter promised to review the files that night. By evening, word had already spread. Neighbors walked slower when passing their home. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared too long. Mrs. Keller from across the street knocked on their door. Her face was pale. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. Sarah frowned. Done what? Mrs. Keller looked over her shoulder before answering. You don't understand who you're dealing with. Carter, she doesn't forgive. And the board, they'll destroy you. Sarah's throat tightened. Why are you warning us? Keller's eyes glistened. Because I saw what they did to the last family who stood up. One day their house was theirs. The next, foreclosure. They were gone in weeks. David stepped forward, his voice sharp. That won't happen to us. But inside, doubt gnawed at him. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made her jump. She finally went to the kitchen for water, only to freeze when she saw the back door. It was unlocked. Her breath caught. She knew she had locked it earlier. Slowly, she turned the bolt, her hands trembling. When she turned back toward the living room, she screamed. David came running. What happened? She pointed. On the couch lay another envelope. Plain. White. Left inside their home. David tore it open. The note inside was short, written in bold black marker. Final warning. Remove the workshop, or watch your home burn. Sarah's knees gave out. David caught her before she hit the floor. Enough, he growled. This ends now. The next morning, David stood in front of the HOA clubhouse. Sarah was beside him, clutching the folder of evidence. Neighbors had gathered, whispers spreading as Carter and the board stepped outside. David's voice boomed. You've lied, you've stolen, you've threatened us. Today, everyone sees the truth. Carter crossed her arms, smirking. Careful, David. Words like that can ruin you. Sarah stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. No. Lies ruin people. And we can prove every one of yours. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Carter's smile flickered. But before David could hand the folder to the waiting reporter, a loud crack split the air. Everyone spun toward the sound. Smoke curled upward from David's backyard, thick, black, rising fast. Sarah's scream tore through the silence. The workshop. David dropped the folder and ran. The neighbors followed, their voices panicked. As they turned the corner, firelight glowed against the night sky. The workshop, the dream David had built with his own hands, was engulfed in flames. And standing in the shadows near the flames, just for a second, Sarah swore she saw a figure watching. Chapter 12. Ashes and Lies. The flames roared, swallowing the workshop whole. David ran with a garden hose, spraying desperately, but it was useless. The wood crackled, collapsing into glowing embers. Sarah pulled at his arm. Stop, David. It's gone. You'll get yourself killed. He dropped the hose, chest heaving. His dream, his sanctuary, reduced to black smoke curling into the night sky. Neighbors stood in clusters, some whispering, some recording on their phones. Carter and the HOA board lingered at the edge of the crowd, their faces lit orange by firelight. Carter's smirk was gone. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. David pointed at her across the flames. His voice thundered. You did this! Gasps rippled. Carter raised her chin. Careful with your accusations, Mr. Miller. Fires are dangerous things. They happen unexpectedly. Sarah stepped forward, holding the scorched envelope she had grabbed from their living room. Her voice shook with fury. You left this in our home. You broke in. You threatened us. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. The weight of truth was shifting. Minutes later, sirens wailed. Fire trucks pulled in, spraying water, drowning the last embers. Police arrived too, questioning neighbors, gathering statements. David handed Officer Daniels the envelope, the photos, the financial papers, everything. His hands shook, but his voice was steady. This is proof. Carter and her board have been using HOA money for intimidation. And now, this fire. Daniels studied the papers with dark eyes. If this is true, we'll get them. But I need more than suspicion. I need direct evidence. Sarah stepped closer, her voice low but fierce. Then look at the money trail. Follow the payment. You'll see where it leads. Daniels nodded grimly. We will. The next day, the story broke. The local paper ran it with photos of the fire, quotes from neighbors, and hints of corruption in the HOA. Some neighbors knocked on David and Sarah's door, offering support. Others stayed distant, afraid. But one thing was clear. The perfect mask of the HOA was cracking. That evening, Sarah sat at the dining table, flipping through the financial reports again. Her brow furrowed. David, look at this. He leaned over. She pointed to a series of payments marked under maintenance and security. The amounts were huge, thousands of dollars each month. But here's the strange part, Sarah whispered. The checks weren't signed by Carter. David blinked. Then who? She slid the paper toward him. They were signed by Lopez. David froze. Their neighbor. The man who had first threatened him about the workshop. The truth struck like lightning. Lopez wasn't just a cranky neighbor. He was funding the intimidation. David's fists tightened. He's the one behind the SUVs. The threat. Maybe even the fire. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. And Carter, she was covering for him. They rushed outside, but Lopez's house was dark, curtains drawn. No car in the driveway. Sarah shivered. He knows we've found out. David's stomach sank. If he burned the workshop, what will he do next? As they turned back toward their home, they noticed something chilling. Their mailbox was open. Inside, a single sheet of paper waited. David pulled it out, reading under the porch light. His face turned pale. Sarah clutched his arm. What does it say? David's voice cracked as he read. The workshop was just the beginning. Next time, it's the house. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She looked at David, her voice trembling. They won't stop. Not until everything is gone. David crumpled the note in his fist, eyes blazing with fury. Then we stop them first. If you love watching my videos, then make sure to subscribe and like my video.